Welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo. We got another great show in store for you. By the way, our theme music, Let Them Talk, is written and sung by Little Willie John, who unfortunately in his 30s died in prison back in the 1960s. He wrote many, many very big hits that other people made very famous. And he's sort of forgotten, and I'm glad I sort of tripped over him and was able to use this song, which I began using when I was over at WBAI, and it was a talk show, and it seemed to fit a late-night talk show format, and we just carried it on to here from WBAI to television. And if you want to know the story of Let Them Talk, that's why we use that as a theme. So, what's the big news of the week? Well, DACA, 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 right? What is this DACA, DACA, DACA business? We're going to talk about Donald Trump and his attempt to throw 800,000 people in one shot out of the country, stir up racial divisions, ethnic hatreds, you know, the same old story from our dear Presidente. So to get to the bottom of this, one of my favorite guests, Maria de Los Angeles, is here. And she is an artist. She was here once before. She rejoins us. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're a DACA student, a dreamer of sorts, but you said you were
no longer a student anymore.
Right, a teacher, really.
Yeah, teacher.
Right, right. Well, that's what happened. That's what's interesting because, and that's one of the issues where in 2012, when Obama passed this DACA rule or law or whatever. We tried to make it a law, but it didn't pass.
Executive order.
Executive order, right? Then now people who were children then are full-grown adults with careers and jobs. So they would really be ripped out of their lives to be sent back to countries they are not that familiar with anymore. They might not even speak the language anymore. They were raised here as Americans. So that's basically a story. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be an artist who represents these people, because in my mind you do. I don't know if you officially do.
I don't.
But many people have told me that you are a leading representative of these folks.
I speak for myself. Everybody has a different experience, and everyone thinks differently about the subject, right?
Right.
This and broader immigration reform questions. Mm-hmm. For me, it's just part of the legal ties that came with me coming here to the United States.
Right.
I came at 11. And I went straight into the education system.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just been something that I've known since I was really young to be the case, that I don't have my documents. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, we didn't have any way of having like a legal work permit or any sort of special category.
Everything had to be off the books.
Yeah, off the books, and there was a lot of trouble with financial aid, whether you could get it or not at the time.
Yes.
Many other things that you don't really think about.
Right.
Not able to get a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
Every teenager wants to have a driver's license,
Sure.
but not in New York. I think it's in California.
In California, it was difficult to get. They had a law against that. Right. California is interesting because you're from California. I mean, that's where you grew up in the United States and Northern California, and California has probably more people, more Chicanas than any other state. I mean, it's a place that has been almost recolonized in parts by Mexico, and seems to be taking, for once, a progressive turn on this, and not like actually supporting people's right to stay. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I think California has been pretty good. It's not like Arizona or Texas, which I hear are much more intense about persecuting people who are not legal. Right. California is a little bit on the other side. But still, you know, if you didn't have papers, there were certain things you couldn't get.
Right.
Financial aid was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't go to, like, I was able to get accepted to, like, the UC system,
mm-hmm.
but they weren't able to provide scholarships at the time.
Right.
Now they have the California Dream Act, which means that kids who graduate and go to apply to university in the UC system can get financial aid.
So it seems to have come a long way from the days of Reagan and Deugmation to...
it's doing really well. It's actually a pretty nice place to be in California, and many people would say they best to be there at the time. Like
right, if you're in this situation.
Yeah, because they have said that they're totally standing up for the immigrant community.
And so is New York, right? New York's been pretty good, both at the state and the city level.
Yeah, also New Jersey, many places, right?
Mm-hmm. Are saying they're going to fight. They're going to fight on behalf of people who came here illegally when they were very young. What does DACA mean? What are the DACA?
Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Yeah,
I believe is what it's called.
And what it was, what's the purpose? How does it work? How did it work? It was passed, not passed. The DREAM Act was the original law.
But it didn't pass the DREAM Act. So
although
Obama,
it did partially pass.
Well, it didn't go by 2 votes, right? I was at Pratt at the time.
It passed in the Senate.
Yeah.
And then it went to the House, and it would have passed in the House, but they couldn't get. There was
2 people, right?
Right. They see in the Senate you need 60 votes to beat they can filibuster.
Yeah.
And prevent somebody from going to vote unless you have 60 people lined up. So if they only have 58, even though it's more than 50, it's still not enough.
It still didn't go. I was a student at Pratt Institute at the time. I remember when people were really upset. It was something that many young artists and activists and everybody, the whole community, was working on getting the DREAM Act to take place.
Right.
So that was upsetting.
Right.
Therefore, Obama took this executive order to give us work permits and prevented from us being deported.
Right.
And we could apply for a special permit to travel abroad.
Right. Now, Donald Trump had never said he was going to go after Dreamers or DACA people. He wanted to go after people coming in over the border. I think the wall is his big thing, right?
We came through the border without documents.
Right.
Like we didn't have a legal, like a stamp.
Right.
Therefore, in his eyes, and he said it at the beginning during the elections, that every person who was here, because technically we are not a separate group. We're part of the major group that he's against.
Right.
So he would say, I'm going to go against everybody who's here illegally. Technically, we still, if DACA is not a thing, then we fall down into the category of being undocumented again.
Right. You're the same as a farm worker or something like that.
We're part of the larger community of undocumented people that he wants to get rid of.
11 million people. 800,000 out of 11 million people.
But it's very easy to deport a lot of people. We've seen with Obama because he made a deal as well.
Right. So that's true. Even though Obama did come up with this with DACA, he is the deporter in chief.
But that's what he was called at the time, right? Because he deported many, many people.
Well, since 2000, since basically 9/11.
Yeah.
America has turned against immigrants in general.
Well, yes, because of fear, right? 9/11 was a very traumatic event for the country.
This is 9/12 right now, 16 years ago.
Yeah, and we still remember, and it became more of a fear factor. And of course, when we are in fear of other people that can come through and attack us, we're going to be anti-immigrant.
Right. And then you saw sort of this characterization of like all of Mexico is characterized by drug lords and crazed people who you see in movies mostly, and do somehow operate in the border regions of the country, but do not identify the whole country. It's ridiculous to say that it's a country of 150 million people.
Well, it's all a stereotype, right? You think that everybody looks a certain way, or that I mean, I don't really know who's smuggling drugs. I wouldn't know. But
who's using drugs? I'm more interested.
Oh yes, we know who's using drugs.
Who's using the drugs? There wouldn't be anybody smuggling them if somebody wasn't using them.
Yeah. So I mean, this country has a high demand for drugs, and somebody will supply it. But many people who come here are not in that category. Of course, we have manual labor. Farming and everything, the service industry.
Yes.
But we also have artists and architects and lawyers, and we have many people who are part of that immigrant community and that you don't think about. We also, the immigrant community, undocumented community is huge. We have people from all over the world.
Not just Mexico, I mean, it's many countries.
It's all over the world, from different races.
China, Japan, you name it, Korea as well. We don't talk about those regions. Huge numbers of people coming from all these different countries, India, you name it.
Everywhere. And therefore, we're just attacking one population, like they have done before in history, attacking just one group of people every time to get new laws to happen and to restrict
to pick
access.
one group to make the scapegoat to bring laws that would be used against everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they'll create this idea, but nobody's been able to prove. I mean, many studies have been, in particular about students and people who came here as under this DACA, this DACA program, that they don't take jobs away from Americans. They're in whole other areas of involvement, like art.
Yeah. So we didn't come here with it. We were here already.
Right.
And if you were of a certain age, you could qualify for it.
Right.
Both like younger, you had to be here of a certain age, and then you couldn't be much older.
Yes.
So there was a limit on who could get it. And some of the requirement was that we were doing well. So you either manage a good business or you have high education.
Right. So you're contributing. You're obviously. I think all immigrants are contributing to America, and that's why New York is justly guarding their right to have immigrants.
You have to show that you're employed.
Yes.
Therefore, you're paying taxes, and you are like contributing in that way in the labor force.
Yes.
And every time you renew it, you have to prove that you're doing well still.
So what has happened? What is your situation right now?
Well, I'm an artist, so most of what I do, it has to do with fine arts, exhibiting my work, and having shows and creating my drawings. Nobody can restrict me from creating my artwork.
Right.
I do like teaching. It's something that I've always liked, and I think it's an addition to my learning experience as an artist. So I teach a course at Pratt Institute. That would be one of the things that would be sacrificed if I'm not allowed to work.
They would have to fire you because they wouldn't be allowed to have you, and you're known, so you couldn't be able to. It's we say the cow is out of the barn, the horse is out of the stable. We all know who Maria de Los Angeles is.
Yeah,
there's
so
no more hiding in the shadows for you. Right?
Specific position, and of course I wouldn't work if I didn't have my documents and teach at Pratt and compromise everybody.
How does that feel personally to be like, you're sort of like out of the closet in a way? Like I think of what it must have been like in the early days after Stonewall for a gay or lesbian person to come out. Hello, everybody. I'm a hated person.
Well, we were encouraged by
Yeah.
President Obama, and at the beginning when DACA was created, we weren't sure to apply. It took me a few months, to tell you the truth, to apply, because we knew when we did that that we were given all our information.
Right.
They probably even know we're friends.
Yes.
So all our information from like what
I'm
schools
sure.
we went to our friends, to where we live, everything gets taken.
Yes.
And so that was one of the reasons we didn't want to necessarily do it. But then again, it promised us to not be deported, and it gave us a work permit.
Right.
And I was able to go to Italy.
You were able to actually travel.
I traveled
outside the United States and come back into the United States.
I chose Italy over Mexico because I wanted to go see the great Italian Renaissance
wonderful.
art.
Italy's beautiful.
And pre-Renaissance.
You're so lucky, right? It's fun. Italy is fun. If you ever want to travel to another country, Mexico is wonderful. Italy is wonderful as well.
Yeah, so I was planning to go to Mexico this coming year.
Right. And I'm interested in this, as we were speaking before we went on the air. Italians years ago, I mean not so much now, but back 100 years ago, went through similar.
Yeah, you guys were considered not white, and you were picked on.
Oh, totally picked on.
Drastically.
Yes, and we had to get tough. We got rough. We played rough.
Well,
in those days it worked.
Well, yeah, it's not something
it's
you want to
different
do
times.
now.
In post-war times, you can't do that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But unless you're Russian, I guess. The Russian mob. But no, I'm only kidding. I mean, obviously, we live in different times now, so we have to throw ourselves on the mercy of the public and convince them that their fears are not founded.
Well, they have to realize that what they've been told, sort of the stereotype, the general stereotype, is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize. Like, I don't need to tell you that I have DACA.
Yeah.
I've gone to Pratt Institute, and I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And I went to school, and I did very well, just like every other student there. And then I went and got my MFA at Yale University, where I did very well as well. I enjoy going to school there.
And nobody challenged you during all those years anyway, right?
No, because it's not something you can tell unless somebody tells you, and somebody gives you the privilege of knowing.
So you want to live here?
Yes.
If somebody really wants to live here, you love the country, you're part of the country, you contribute to the economy, you contribute, even more importantly to me, to the culture and to the beauty and the aesthetic, and you bring your disposition and all those things that make it make a country, a city like New York, such a wonderful place where you put up with the sirens and the garbage trucks in the middle of the night and rats in your park and all that stuff, because you meet interesting people.
Yeah. All the time.
And how terrible it would be to follow Mr. Bannon's approach to running a country where it becomes like a boring, incestuous place where everybody looks the same and acts the same and talks the same.
Well, the differences in the population and the culture, that's what makes this country really wonderful, and it's always been the case, because you've always had an influx of new culture coming in and what is already part of it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, first of all, my priority is being an artist, and it's always been.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a little bit irritating that we have to deal that since 11 years old, and some people since we're like months old, they have to deal with this fact, and it's a fact that they can't change.
Right.
One of the things is like I can go to Yale University. I can do great things, and many of my friends also do great things.
Yes.
And then there's one thing that we have nothing to do with necessarily.
Yeah.
That we can't fix. We need it to be legalized.
Right. And what do you? I mean, there are obviously people who are hostile to immigration, or hostile to anybody who doesn't fit a certain idea of what America should be, which is basically extremely European, extremely white, extremely, a certain kind of Christian, a certain kind of set of beliefs. There's fearful of change. I mean, and I hear that a lot. There are people who are fearful of change, and what I see, at first I sort of hated these people, but then as I've traveled more since Trump has gotten into power, I noticed that they're scared. And that the people, basically, the more liberal people are sort of the church people, sort of reaching out to their neighbors and trying to convince them that, Al-Qaeda isn't hiding in the local pathmark or something like that, right? And there's that fear. I mean, it seems crazy, but it's a real fear, that anything that seems not Midwestern, Middle American, traditional American is somehow a sign of disorder, like it's bringing disorder to the country or something.
Well, I think for myself, coming from California to New York was a big eye-opener. I learned a lot of new things. I was able to interact with people from everywhere. I think when you isolate yourself, and then there was a lot of economic damages that happened to many areas in the country.
Yes.
So economics, maybe not so great education, and then isolation can create people to dislike each other and to dislike anything that is different.
Right.
Because these are all young people, and I've seen some of the protesting going on, and people are discontent with the way their lives are going. If their lives are not going well, they're going to find a reason for it not to go. I'm sure somebody would say, "Why did she go to an Ivy League school and I didn't?" But I worked very hard on my artwork.
You did all. You made all the. You did all the things you had to do.
Nobody handed me that. When I arrived to the country at 11, I didn't speak English. I had very minimum education.
Sure. You worked yourself up to it. I mean, typical bootstrap immigrant makes himself great. I mean, my dad tells that story.
Isn't that what America always wanted?
What's what New York and San Francisco and L.A.
This is why I'm
Chicago,
here.
right? But New Orleans. There are a lot of places that are built by immigration, and there are places where people really didn't care, but now they're sort of scared, and they're easily manipulated by the white nationalist point of view because they think, the best I don't know, I'm not them, but I go visit these places and I read, and it seems to be a fear that the country's changing very fast.
But it has always been changing.
Right, but they just noticed it.
Oh.
They just noticed it, and I don't know why they noticed it is because it's of Breitbart and all these Drudge Report and these right-wing people made it their business and Fox News was the worst of them all.
We all know that,
right? And to make it their business to remind people in a million different ways the horrors of the fact that within the next couple of decades, the white European descendants of the original settlers will be 44% instead of 54% of the country.
But, that's just natural. They will happen to be in large numbers because they killed most of the Native Americans. And this country has that, and then you have everybody else. This country was never
Right.
Never
and isn't
white.
Mexico basically a Native American country? I mean, it's half.
All of the Americas, really,
right. All of them.
And that happened the same thing in Mexico. You had the Spanish come over, subjugated and killed off a lot of Native Americans there, and you still have.
I want to talk about your art, but you're getting me off on now. I wanted to talk about this little theory I had in the
I don't
back
know
of my
why we're
mind.
talking about Mexico because I don't actually know Mexico.
Right. That's true, right? But that's an interesting point to make to people about what DACA is, because you're talking about folks who have very little connection to the country they came from because they were almost their entire lives here in the United States.
Yeah.
This was an exception for people who were too young to make the decision themselves to come over the border.
I couldn't do this interview fully in Spanish with you, especially when we talk about art, which is what I love. I love
Right. And I want to talk about that besides going into a whole thing about why did they take over half of Mexico and include it into the United States and then complain that there's too many Mexicans here. I mean, we could talk about that. It's all night, but we don't have all night. So I want to talk about your art. Tell me about what's next with you, what you're doing.
I'm actually curating a show that will open February to April here at John Jay College, which is around the block from us at this moment.
Right here. We're right here, right?
Yeah.
So when is that happening again?
In February. So it'll open in the middle of February.
Tell us about the show. Tell us the artwork you've been doing and what.
So the show will include some of I've been doing these large drawing installations that include many drawings done sort of train of thought, right? James Joyce style.
Yeah.
About the situation and about my thoughts around it, but all images.
Sure.
And I'll have this large installation, and it will also include some of my paper garments that I've been building.
Right, and that's the last time we had you on, we were talking about the paper garments, and they were beautiful. They were dresses made of paper that a whole bunch of people wore that expressed some of the ideas we've been talking about this evening, right?
So I will have some of that, which a dress that is going to have even more images, and it will be this sort of narrative on it. And I really enjoy doing this kind of work because people get to wear my artwork, and it becomes an experience for them.
Right.
And so that will be in an installation setting.
It was at your show at McKinsey, who's also been a guest on this show as well. Yeah. So you have more shows. So I always gave more guest ideas, and you have shows from very interesting artists who are in this similar kind of situation. Tell us more about your artwork, what you've been working on.
I've been creating these drawings. I'm creating about 1,500, 2,000 drawings that will go in a very large installation, sort of a mural style, sort of in a room.
How do you get all this done? How do you do 1,500 paintings and teach a class at the same time? That must be very difficult.
No, I teach a class once a week, and the rest of the time I'm doing my artwork, which is what I really want to be doing.
Right.
And that will be going into a museum in Oregon, in Ashland. So I will have my second large museum show.
Right. So you basically you're young, pretty young as it is, but your youth you spent in California, right?
I did. I was there until
the West Coast.
22 when I came to Pratt.
Right. In Santa Rosa, you went to.
Yeah, I went to Santa Rosa Junior College.
Right, where my daughter went as well.
Yeah, it's a great school.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. She's great. She's like studying calculus and all this stuff.
It's a wonderful school.
Yeah.
And that's where I studied art before I went to Pratt Institute.
Right. Very interesting.
I transferred in.
Okay.
At the time.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
Yeah, so I was painting.
And beautiful area. I love that town. It's a beautiful town. Very, very verdant flowers.
It's gorgeous.
And everything. The weather's perfect. The Russian River is there and everything.
Oh,
and you
it's
got the Muir Woods. I love the Muir Woods. It's beautiful. It's an artistic. Why did you leave such a beautiful place to come to this smelly?
Well, because I wanted to go to art school, and I had got into many schools at the time for undergrad.
Yeah.
But Pratt gave me a very good deal, and I was like, hey, I'm going to New York. I mean, New York is still a place to be for art. And actually, to tell you the truth, I make these large paintings, and they have some landscape scenes in them. And people always think that I'm painting Mexico, but the landscapes come from California.
Right, which used to be part of Mexico. Actually.
Yeah, but still, you know.
I know, right? It's
and
the United States, right?
My drawings are.
But I understand you're an American in every way. You're totally a United States person, right? We're sitting here. You've spent your whole life here. You don't even speak as much Spanish. You speak perfect English, and you went to Yale. Geez, and Santa Rosa Community College. I mean, junior college.
Yeah.
So that makes you about as American as you can get.
I mean, that was sort of.
Do you like apple pie?
Oh, I love apple pie with ice cream.
Right.
But my work is about what's happening in the country, and it comes a lot from my experience in California, but also what I've been experiencing in New York.
Yeah.
And I do have a lot of border scenes, but they're usually about the fears and about my own being illegal myself, as you would say. And that kind of thought that goes with it, because it's an experience.
Right. There's some argument, debate about whether to use the word illegal or not to use it.
Oh yes, people say not to use it, but to me it's been so ingrained in illegality has been such a part of growing up, of the personality and of my experience in this country. And I think that we should actually use the language, I don't describe myself as that, but to bring up the word, because it's such a violent word, is a good thing.
Right. Well, when I was your age, we used to talk about being outlaws.
Oh, being outlaws, but outlaws sounds
in America,
cool.
we'd
that
say,
sounds like you're riding a horse and like you're like with a sombrero and you're
as we used to dress in those days,
right?
To be cool. That's how we used to dress before black letter. Then I came to New York and it was all black, but that's another time.
Here you wear black with red lipstick.
Yeah, right. It's a little different.
Yeah, that's what I've been up to. Just doing my work and making sure that I do that regardless of what's happening, and that I still participate in the debate, because my artwork is in a way, now you have me here talking with you.
Yeah.
But I like people to experience what I'm thinking through my drawings.
I see. Very good. And so do how's your studio? I mean, do you sit in a studio and travel in your brain to the places that you want to, or do you go out and find a place?
I read the newspaper. I watch videos online. I sit with myself. I go see shows, just like any other artist in New York.
Right.
And then I just sit there and draw. I've always had the facility to just sketch.
Right.
I just start and wherever my mind goes.
Right. What's your favorite thing to sketch? What's your favorite image of all?
My favorite image of all.
Is there one, even if there is one or not?
I really like drawing mothers and children. And when I was applying for Yale University, somebody asked me if it was feminism that I was describing.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoy drawing family scenes.
Right.
And I think it just has to do with the way that I was brought up and that sort of community that I came from in Santa Rosa.
Right, in Santa Rosa, right?
Yeah.
Right, and it's I know Santa Rosa. I mean, everybody. It's a type of place where it's like big backyards, and kids running around everywhere, and people smoking big doobies, as I remember.
Yeah,
I know, California lifestyle.
It's very relaxed,
yes,
and it's very community oriented, and I draw that just because artists always come back to whatever they have experienced.
Yeah,
we don't necessarily think about it, but it goes back to that, and so therefore, like. I also draw people in the streets, in the subway, just everything.
Have you visited other places in the United States? Have you?
I've been to Vegas. I have been to Massachusetts, Connecticut, many places this way.
On the East Coast, so you stay safe in the safe states.
Yeah, I've been going around more here because there are art shows to go to, or I go to Vermont to ski
up there,
and snowboard.
Yeah. Oh no, you
snowboard? My friends. I don't snowboard. I ski.
You ski?
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay, very good. So, so you like to ski? Well, there's not much skiing in Mexico, so that's about it. You got to pick that up here. I mean,
I don't know.
I looked up if there was snow in Mexico. There's a couple of really high volcanoes near Mexico City that have snow, but they're not for skiing.
Oh yeah, you would have to go to other places for that.
Right. Okay, we have half a minute to go. Tell us what you want people to remember about what you're saying and what you want, where to get more information.
They can go to my Instagram, De Los Angeles Art. Is my Instagram handle. They can go to my Facebook page and visit me there, or just look up some articles about my work and about what I've been up to in the last few years.
Yes.
And of course, they can contact me on Instagram. I am around, and I'll post my shows there so they can tell what I'm up to.
Marie de Los Angeles, thank you for joining us on Let Them Talk, and we'll see you next week. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting things next week too.